hello and welcome back to my channel. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Saskia and I have just finished my undergraduate degree in psychology. I made a very similar video, and by that I mean I made the exact same video for how to write a literature review, first class, and I got my results back and I got a first in my research paper, so I thought I'd do the exact same video for a research paper. Now, I know not everyone does it separated. I know most people, I think most people end up doing it as one big report, so some of the advice and things on like feedback won't necessarily be hugely relevant or useful, but if you've not handed in a literature review, you can't use feedback from your lit review. I submitted my research paper a while ago. It was looking at how anxiety in older adults got worse over the COVID pandemic. That was like the general theme, and then there were other kind of mini bits and bobs around. So I'm going to give you step by step of kind of what to do / what I did, and I will include on screen some examples of, like, I don't know, websites or documents that I used. I definitely used less stuff to do my research paper than my lit review, which I guess if you do psychology, we don't write lit reviews. We've never done a lit review before. So my lit review was the first of a kind, but I was also doing a systematic review, which is not a lit review. Like, it's a completely different style of review. So I needed a lot more help to do the lit review. I did do better on the lit review because, I don't know, I'm a girl boss. But research paper, I think I needed a bit less support because we've done so many before. So like, if you've done research papers before, use them. We had an entire module where we were given like a step-by-step of how to do a research paper. We didn't write an intro or discussion, but like we had bullet points for method. Like, first thing, if you've done them before, check your feedback, go on the Blackboard, the Moodle, go on whatever resources you have for it and use them. Step 1 of the actual writing process. Now, I am assuming you have a question by this point. I don't know how you come up with a question. I don't know how you come up with a question because we didn't come up with our own. I was simply handed a set of data and told, do stuff. And I was like, okay, what analyses do I know how to run? That makes my question. So I don't know how to come up with a research paper, but like once you've got that title, come back to the video and then I will walk you through it. So step 1, this is assuming that you have handed in a lit review before. Get your feedback for your lit review and use it, because basically your research paper introduction is a literature review. It is a summary of your literature review and now I'm going to do this. So all you really need to do is find your 4,000 word lit review. What worked? What were the key theories, the key themes, the key bits of critical analysis that were good? What feedback did you get that was like, yes, this is good? That is your intro. Obviously there are bits that you add to make it research paper specific, but basically, like if your supervisor said your lit review sucks, book in for a meeting with them and figure out why it sucked, because if not, that's your entire intro kind of destroyed. So basically, like, is there anything that you missed? Are there any new papers on the topic? So like, I ran a systematic search. If my research paper had followed on from my lit review, I would have just rerun that search to check if there was new papers. Are there any new theories, any new papers that could be useful? Has anyone done the proposed research that you're going to do? Like, it's fine if they have, because then you just put it in your discussion or your conclusion and you say, oh look, well, other people have done this research and they found this and we found this, and they're not different, they're not the same, and I wonder why that is. Like, you can still use it, but basically check your lit review, check any feedback that you got, any points that you missed. From your lit review, you can write up a bullet point intro. So like, the next step is a bullet point plan, like a bullet point outline. So in a research paper, you have a set of key sections. You have an abstract, you have an introduction, you have a method, you have results, you have discussion, references, appendices, that kind of thing. Literally write those words into a document. I'll show you what I did. This is my first step that I did because my lit review wasn't even related to my research paper. I basically put all of those titles in and then put bullet points of either things I had to talk about or sections that just had to exist. So, for example, in the intro, you want a generic outline. So, you know, I was looking at how anxiety was affected, how old people's anxiety was affected in the global pandemic. I started with, oh look, the pandemic made mental health worse. Oh, specifically, let's look at anxiety. Oh, well, specifically, let's now look at old people and anxiety. Oh, well, specifically, like, again, funnel technique, get more narrow into what your research direction is. So my bullet point for this was pandemic affected mental health of everyone, specific mental health disorders, association of long COVID and new disorders, statement of hypotheses. That's your intro. Next bullet point is then your method. Method will be slightly different depending on, like, if you did your own study, if you had to get ethical approval, all those kinds of things. So my plan for method was participants, design, ethics, procedure/design, that was procedure for me, measures, data analysis. So you basically just find out what headings you need. For example, if you ran your own study, you need procedure, you need measures, you need participants, like, check which bits you actually need. You might not need data analysis. I didn't need data analysis, but my supervisor said, girlie, put it in. I said, I don't fucking know what that is, but I'm gonna do it. Like, literally just bullet point that. What you're currently making is your skeleton, which you will then start to fill in. And also, like, if you've been given a template, check what's in the template, because they might have told you what you have to include. So, like, then I have results. I know that the first point in my results is descriptive stats. I haven't told you what descriptive stats I'm going to do. I hadn't even run my tests, but I knew I would do some descriptive stats. I then, at this point, when I made my outline, had three research questions. I ended up with 4. So your plan can change and that's fine. But I literally just wrote RQ1, difference between blank and blank. RQ2, association. RQ3, do blank and blank predict a new illness? Like, I wasn't answering those questions, I was just putting in, this is my question. That's it. Your discussion, basically, method and results, they're going to be small sections. Method, you're probably going to need to put more stuff in when you're writing your plan. Results is not really anything you can do. Discussion is basically your lit review conclusion, add some critical thinking. So, summary of results. I literally wrote summary of results. I then wrote, how does it apply to other research, similar/different? Strengths/limitations, implications, future directions, conclusion. That was my first document of just, I wrote that generically. As I did research, it went into that section. So this document went from being, 100 words, not sentences, to being pretty much all of the bullet pointed information I needed. So participants eventually became participants, 117 white males from blank and blank, recruited via this, incentive of £12. Like, eventually all of the details were in that section, but they did not start there. From that outline, I made a few documents. I had a background document, which was for my intro, because my lit review was not the same. If your lit review was the same, whatever research you've used for your lit review, you can probably use that for your research paper. You might just want to make a separate document to, like, streamline it down into which papers were the most important, which points were the most important, and, like, maybe which ones are, the original research that introduces the theory, and then maybe like here's an updated one, and now here's what I'm going to do. Also made a document for study details, because what I was doing is I was using secondary data from someone else's study. So I was using the English Longitudinal Study of Aging. I googled English Longitudinal Study of Aging, and I basically just found all of the participant details, all of the document details. I made that into a document and I just pasted, and I was like, okay, that's all there. I put the web page in. I didn't want to put it into my plan. I wanted everything separate to begin with. Then I had, obviously, my graveyard. I only started using a graveyard in 3rd year, but I really enjoy having a graveyard. Basically, anything I want to delete, even if it's, 3 sentences, put it in a graveyard. Stays there in case I might end up needing it. I also then made a statistical plan. So if you've been told, what tests you're doing, you don't necessarily need to make a statistical plan, but basically what I was given is I was just told, here's some secondary data, make a research paper, and I was like, fuck, I don't know what tests I can do. So I basically just thought, okay, I can do regressions, ANOVAs and t-tests. Done, I'm going to do regressions, ANOVAs and t-tests. Statistical plan ended up being, you know, research question 1 will run a regression with blank as blank variable, and then I literally ran it in SPSS, put a picture of the output in. I did obviously save the output, but I didn't want to have to keep opening the output, I just wanted it in Google. Those are the documents that I made, then I built on those documents. So we'll start with the introduction. The introduction is the easiest place to start, but you could start with method. I think it's best to start with intro because then you break up doing intro and discussion because they are your big sections. If you can't start with intro and you don't have to like type it up, if you've done the study, do method. Method is straightforward, you can't be wrong. Whereas intro actually kind of requires a bit of thought to turn your lit review into a research paper. So first of all, look for some examples of anything that's even just in the same discipline as you, just to see like how much time do they spend on each topic. For example, my introduction of the pandemic, my introduction was maybe 1,000 words, maybe 1,500 because my results and method were small. My introduction to the pandemic was literally 2 sentences long because I thought, okay, well that's just the very, very background. I really don't need to waste time on it. Figure out how relevant is the background to what you're trying to say. You know, if you're doing something that's like really novel and you really have to explain things, that's fine. You can spend a lot more time on things, but I knew that I had 4 research questions. I had a lot of shit to get down in the introduction. So, you know, my pandemic affecting the mental health of everyone was 2 sentences. I then put, oh, well, now specifically anxiety, and that was 2 sentences. And then I talked about anxiety for longer because anxiety was the main bit. So then I was like, oh, well, anxiety in old people, ... Here's a whole paragraph. And obviously use up-to-date research, like, unless your model, you know, unless what you're testing is 40 years old, but like, try and find some relevant research, because if not, someone's just gonna go, babe, this is shit. Like, your intro should be good because you've done a whole lit review. Like, I will hold my hands up and say my intro was not that good. I think my intro was the weakest section of mine. I hadn't done a lit review on that topic. I didn't know what the literature was saying. Google your topic, your theme, find out what the current research is saying. Like, yes, you've got a literature review, but you still have Google, and you should still use Google and not just your lit review and go, well, I already did it. Because you should use your lit review to say, okay, well, this structure worked and these studies were correct. But you will find more things that you need. You will, you know, start writing up your research paper and think, oh, actually, I need a more up-to-date version of this paper. Let me go and find one. Like, everything won't be in your lit review, but your lit review will be a big helping hand. Again, funneling. Widest topic down to the very, very finest point of, once you've basically reached the narrowest conclusion, that is when you have your research questions and your predictions. After I'd done all my writing on, you know, what was the pandemic, what was anxiety, how did anxiety change throughout the pandemic, blah, blah, blah. Now you have either predictions, research questions, or hypotheses. I had research questions with hypotheses. You can have a really odd combo, basically. If there's no research on anything, it's a research question. It's a, how does blank affect blank? Because I don't know how it affects blank, there's no research. If you have got evidence, you can do a hypothesis or a prediction. Hypothesis is better than a prediction, I would say, because I think hypothesis sounds better. So what I had is I originally just had research questions, then I had research questions with hypotheses. So I said, research question 1, colon, da 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 da. So research question is generic. It's a, how did this happen? It's not a, like this. Hypothesis, essentially, this is how it changed. So my hypothesis 1 for research question 1 was, anxiety will increase in older adults between June and July of 2021. Or was it 2020? Don't remember. Barely remember doing my research paper, if I'm honest. So your hypothesis is a statement of, this is what is going to happen. And obviously, you're using your evidence. So what you've written in your introduction should support any hypothesis you make. You can't just make a hypothesis because you think that's going to happen if you've not said any evidence that it should happen in your introduction. So what you can do is you can put your research questions / hypotheses in, I'd say, 2 different spots. Everything can go at the bottom, as in at the very end of your introduction, you know, research question 1, blank, hypothesis, blank. I feel like there was a statement or something I said before I said research question 1 on hypotheses, and I think it was about like, this research aims to close the gap of knowledge around this. Something along those lines, which, yes, reads shitty, but is kind of what you have to do. Or you can do like after each paragraph on a topic, you do the relevant research question and hypothesis. For example, if I said, you know, I've done my introduction on how the pandemic affected the mental health of everyone, and then older adults, and then anxiety, after I finish that paragraph on like general anxiety changing through the pandemic, I would then put hypothesis 1. Anxiety of older people will get worse between June and July. So you can either basically do it, research question and hypotheses, bulk at the end. That's what I did because it just made it a bit easier. Or you can do your hypotheses research question under each section where you talk about the relevant information. Then you have your method. Method you can be correct. Whereas introduction you can't really be correct. It's more like the lit review where it's, you know, we prefer this. Method, you are correct. You are objectively right or wrong. Sud ran away, so that's not fun. So yeah, method, you're right or wrong. Introduction, you're not so much. So basically, don't be wrong. If it's like you're using someone else's data, find other studies that have used that data and figure out what they've said. Like, obviously you're only going to be using a certain amount of participants, but again, you can't be wrong with the amount of participants that you are using. So don't be wrong. So, you know, if you've run the study yourself, literally split your screen and have the study open as you do it on the left-hand side, have a document on the right-hand side, literally write every single thing that happens. It doesn't have to be word, you know, it can just be bullet points of participants asked for consent in a box, signature, date of birth, clicked next, screen was shown. Like, it can just be bullet points, but it does have to be everything that happened. So, for example, my method, like my procedure bit, wasn't long because I was using someone else's data. It was just data was collected via this study for more information, see here. However, if you've done your own study, you do have to go in, like in the procedure section, it has to be enough detail that it's replicable. And like, it's annoying small things of like, you know, any information that your participants write down on your website, you have to say that it was written down. You have to say participants asked for consent, and you have to say where that happened. So if we start, you know, with participant details, you should have a data file. It's easier if you've done qualitative data because you've only got, you know, you might have 10 participants. You basically just have to put any details you kind of collected on them, maybe 3 or 4 sentences. So you start with how many took part. Maybe 119 participants were collected from. So 119 students at the University of Southampton took part in this study for course credit. So you have to say who they were, why they took part, were they reimbursed, was it compulsory, how did you collect them, was it advertised online? So for example, mine was volunteer sampling, and people who had already enrolled in the regular English longitudinal study of ageing were contacted by phone to see if they wanted to take part in the COVID study. They were given £10 for doing this. Exactly why and how they took part. So in your participant section, you will also put the mean and standard deviation of the age of the participants. I will put mine on screen, or put an example of mine on screen. It's, you know, it is just 3-4 sentences of there was 114 of them. They took part because they were paid £10 and we collected them from an online website. You know, we collected them from Prolific. It's just short statements. It doesn't have to flow gorgeously. It's just kind of, look, we got a participant. Look, we got this information. Then I think I just found a template and then followed that. So next I had measures. Measures is basically how did you assess things. So if, for example, in the study that I used, they used the GAD-7 and the CSED. I only ended up using the GAD-7. You have to explain what that is. So, you know, measures generalized anxiety disorder scale 7. This is a scale of, this measures anxiety using 12 questions, which you score 1 to 5, with 1 being I completely disagree and 5 being I completely agree. Like, it's annoying and small information that's like, it's the kind of thing anyone can find online. Anyone can find out how to use the GAD-7 and like how it works, but you have to include the small details anyway. So, you know, oh, this is a 7-question item, a 7-item question, and this is an example question, and it's scored out of 40 with scores above 20 indicating this and scores above 25 indicating this. Like, it's just a, what did you use? Give an example question. How many questions were there? Is it scored on points? How many points gets what criteria? Is it a good scale? Does it have good consistency, reliability? That, I think I put Cronbach's Alpha in there for that. Then in your procedure, it's annoyingly long, but it has to be enough information for someone to replicate your study. I don't know, say you gave them a test. So you had people come into a lab and you gave them a test. Where did you sit them? Was the test given by paper? Did you provide a pen? Like, it's small annoying things, but it's also the case of like, in psychology, those small annoying things could end up being confounding variables. Small thing, but was it a black pen? If you gave them a blue pen, would that affect your study? It's dumb, but literally every single thing that you did goes in procedure. You can, you know, slightly cut things down by maybe saying, oh, see materials for all materials provided. And like, in your materials list, you might have a black pen, blue piece of paper, that kind of thing. Or like, see appendix for informed consent. That's how you make it smaller. But it does end up being kind of a long, winding, boring paragraph. You will then also have your design section. This is just, how were the conditions allocated? What conditions existed? Did you have control group who did not experience any condition, or who just had their, I don't know, say you're measuring their memory. Control group who came in and did a memory test, and then experimental group who did a memory test, got slapped in the face, and then did the memory test again. Like, what were the conditions? What were the differences in the conditions? How were people allocated to those conditions? Was it random allocation? If it was random, was it done by a computer program? Was it strategically done that all females went in condition 1, all males went in condition 2? How did your study work? You then have, which most people don't do, and I wish I hadn't had this stupid section, I had data analysis, which is basically just, when you do your results, you normally say, a Pearson's correlation was conducted to identify a relationship between independent variable 1 and independent variable 2. I did all of that in data analysis. So I had some statements that were just, I basically had research question 1, and then I had a multiple linear regression was done with this as variable 1, and this is covariable 2, and this is the setting. And then I did all the same thing again. Then I had to say like, oh, P was measured at 0.005 and 0.05, and everything was conducted on IBM SPSS version 27. It's basically, how did you conduct the stats? What test did you do? If you've not been asked to include this, don't include it. I think it's stupid. So yeah, method, you can realistically just get it out. You can just get it done. It's annoying, it takes a little bit of time, but there's not much thought to it. Result is then when we struggle. Like, up until this point, you don't have to have done any kind of analysis. You can just write all of this up. You don't have to do any thinking, really. Results, you have to run the tests. So obviously, by this point, you should know what test you're doing because you've got research questions. Run your tests multiple times, like 3 or 4 times. Run them once a day. Like, save all of your data. Is it, I don't remember what it's called, but in SPSS, it's like a script thing where you can just like press a button and it runs all your tests for you, and like it will automatically do them. I don't remember what it's called, but if you've got that, do it. Just click that button and it will automatically run all your tests, and then you can just open it every day and check the same thing, and then put all of the tables, all of the output into a document. Maybe make a separate document per question because you get a lot of shit that comes out. Like, in SPSS, not all of it's fucking relevant. Like, you don't need all of it. But if you're then not sure how to write it up, because APA is horrible, if you're doing psychology, if you don't include the comma in the right place, if one of your things isn't italicized, you're stupid. What you need to do is either Google APA 7 convention for writing up regression, or APA 7 multiple regression, or find the slides from whenever you were taught how to do that test. Like, if it's psychology, you have to have done a stats module, you've probably learned how to do that. If not, see if someone from psychology or something will like lend you some slides if there's a correct way to do it. Like, obviously if you're doing, I don't know, Harvard, there might be a different way to write up tests. Like, you don't always have to write up the test in a specific way, but you do for psychology. So check that. What I found is when I was writing up my tests, Google gave me lots of different ways of how to do it. However, because I knew it was being marked by my university, I followed the ones that we were taught in my university's lecture slides. So if you're getting lots of alternative ideas, do it per your university's lecture slides, because even if they're wrong, they like to big themselves up and you can go, but this is literally what you fucking taught me. First section in my results was an assumptions. You do not need this. I think this is a load of crap. But it's basically like like in A-level when you're like, well, if it's independent groups and if it's normal data and it's nominal and it's normally distributed, it's that. It's basically I had this type of data and it was normally distributed, and because I was running a correlation, I had to check for collinearity, and I was like, oh, collinearity was good. I don't know what this means. I didn't know what any of these words meant, but I figured it out, and I just had 5-6 sentences that was like, collinearity was good, Cronbach alpha was good, see the table for later details. Here's the thing, you will also make so many fucking tables. Like, when you're making tables, Google them, find them somewhere else. We'd already done research papers before, so a lot of the stuff that we were doing, we already had. Like, for example, we'd already done ANOVAs, so I had an ANOVA table from another thing that I just copy and pasted and then changed the numbers. Or, if you're psychology again, Google APA 7 multiple regression table. Someone's made it for you. I'm not sure if there's a specific website that I use for the tables. If there is, I'll find it, because Jesus Christ, it was a godsend, because APA is nasty. I'm gonna be honest, they're really rude. Now, in your results section, before you actually start giving your results, you now need another participant section, which this for me was basically like a who made up the final sample, because I had like 2 waves. It was more people responded to wave 1 than wave 2, and in wave 1 there were more men than there were women, and generally the sample scored really, really high for anxiety. Now what you have is, if you've just got one test, you just go into it. You say an ANOVA was conducted, or a analysis of variance analysis, multiple analysis. You put your test in, you say a blank was done with blank as the variables, and it identified a significant difference. Like, there will be a template for how you say this. Again, if your university has given one, use that. If not, Google will have them. Again, each website will be slightly different, but basically whichever one puts the most information in, use that. Like, some of them might not put an effect size in. If you can work out extra information from your document or from your results, do it. Like, I didn't have to find an effect size, but I knew it would make me look a little bit smarter, so I found an effect size because I didn't have to run an extra test. It was already in my data. Like, if you've done multiple tests, this is when you split it up again. So I had results, assumptions, participants, then I had research question 1, research question 2, and then under research question 1, unfortunately, because I'd already done data analysis in method, I didn't have to say an ANOVA was run. So I literally just said, this found a significant difference. Like, just had the APA conventions for how you write that, just all your numbers, spitting words. It's just, here are some numbers, let me italicize them for you, and then APA will go, great. No one reads your results section. I'm going to be honest, I've done 3 years of a degree, I don't read results sections, I can't understand them, I don't want to. You have to summarise it in your discussion, so why am I going to read it? I'm not. Basically, find the APA template, copy it. It doesn't matter if when you read it you're like, I don't know what this means, because I don't think anyone does. As long as it meets the conventions, as long as you check stupid things like, is there a space between your your equals bar and your M for median? Is there brackets? Like all the pedantic little things that, again, APA will tell you that are stupid if you don't have them. So you've got all of your text information, all of your results in text form. You want all of them in table form as well. There's an APA convention of how to make those. There's an APA convention of a title. Like, the results is the kind of thing where you're right or you're wrong, but it's also the kind of thing where you will spend so much time on pedantic details. Like, you will spend so much time on making your table, making sure all the numbers are right, making sure that, you know, the stub heading is aligned, that the note is correct. Like, I'll put an example table up because I think there are some times where you have to say, like, you have to put a note and you have to say that this is significance at 0.005, or like, again, tables are really annoying, but they're the kind of thing that, again, like, if you're gonna need to allocate a lot of time for them, if I'm honest. Running your tests, fine. Writing up your tests, it will take a little bit of time just to get the APA conventions, but like, making a table, even if you've got copy and paste templates, I don't know why it still took me so long. I still really just took my sweet time doing this. That is then the end of your results section. You can put some of your tables in text in the results section, but I don't know when you do that. I didn't do that, but I think you technically can. What you then have is your discussion, which, because your method and results are right or wrong, your discussion is kind of your most important section. And also, if people read your paper, I'm heading straight to the discussion, if I'm honest. I'm not reading the method and results. Discussion is kind of the section. Like, if you're going to have a bigger discussion or intro, it's discussion. When you start your discussion, it's literally just a summary of your results. It is literally just this test was run and we found that anxiety got worse. Like, it's everything that you said in your results section without any of the numbers. So, did you find a difference between variable 1 and variable 2? Yes, okay. A significant difference was found between variable 1 and variable 2. It's literally just results without the numbers. And again, that's a nice bit where you are right or wrong. You have to include all of the results. Don't go like, oh, but this one wasn't significant. No, you still have to include it. You also want to say, is it in line with the hypotheses that you made? So for example, I think 3 out of 4 of mine were in line with the hypotheses. I literally just put, this is not in line with the hypotheses. Like, I had multiple research questions. What you can do is almost like a paragraph per question, or just block it all together. Because what you then do is you start to make a comparison between your research and someone else's research. Whether it's just the general, whether it's the expectations of results that other people made, whether it's that someone else has actively done the same study as you and they found this, why did they find that but you didn't? For example, I found anxiety got worse throughout the pandemic, and so did most people. However, there was 1 or 2 studies that didn't. I then had to say, why did that happen in those and then didn't happen in mine? So, for example, they included a sample of people who already had really bad anxiety and their anxiety couldn't have got any worse. Why did other people find things that you didn't? Why did you find things that other people didn't? Like, especially if you're research, realistically, you found things that other people didn't because you're a student. Like, realistically, it will be that your sample doesn't get the same results because you have just students. Other proper researchers will have real participants and not students who are forced to do these studies. So it could be that you didn't actually, none of your hypotheses were proven correct because you have a bunch of students and students have lots of confounding variables. You now need to Google, why do students fuck up studies? That is now your point of your discussion is, oh, look, I didn't find anything similar because students suck, and here is some research on that. Like, this is where you're getting your marks of basically, why did you find what you found, or why did you not find what you found? So like, all of mine was quantitative research, and I just found other quantitative research. Like, there's no point of me adding qualitative research because it's not even slightly similar. It can be that there's nothing that supports what you found, and then you say, shit. But you also say why you think that happened. Was it that your study was just not very well run? Was it that you think your study is actually better than other people's? Basically, anything you found, why did you find it? Then have the implications. Actually, So yeah, that section is probably the biggest chunk of your discussion, because it's basically a look what I found, look what everyone else found, discuss. You then have your implications. Implications are essentially, what are the benefits of your research? Does it change policy? Does it change clinical treatment of a disorder? Does it simply add more research to a field that didn't have much research? Does it add a new perspective? Does it use a new sample? Why did you do your study? What is the point of your study? My implications were pretty much just clinical. It was we can use this to understand anxiety in old people, because I didn't really have like a novel reason for doing my research. You don't have to, but it makes your implications a lot easier, because mine was kind of like I don't know what the implications are. I kind of just got told to do this. I don't think there are any. You have to say that there are some. If in doubt, probably clinical. It will probably have clinical implications, or it will have implications in just understanding why we do things. That kind of bullshit. Then have the limitations. Don't tell them any strengths of your research. I think you can do with strengths and weaknesses. I think don't bother with the strengths. The strengths should be highlighted in the fact that you chose them, I guess. Like, limitations, you're more so looking for just things that popped up, whether it's your entire sample ended up being of one demographic. Okay, why was that a problem? So your limitations, you don't want to find many. If you find too many, everyone's going to look at your research and go, well, then why did you do it? Why did you pick that method if it has so many flaws? So I knew that my participants were paid, but I was like, okay, but that's not really the biggest issue. I was like, yes, volunteer is an issue. However, I could probably find something that's, I guess, a better thing to discuss. So I found that, all of my sample was white British or something. And I was like, well, if we look at this study, other findings were found. And therefore, this is a problem, because it's kind of like AO3. When you're like, here was the limitation. Here's why it's an actual issue. Not just, our study sucked. It's we used volunteer sampling, which could have an issue because, as stated by, I don't know, blank and blank, volunteer samples are not representative. That kind of thing. So it could be, that the population wasn't great. Probably if you've got all students, again, that's your limitation. It could be that your assessment methods weren't great. Maybe that you had a lot of people guess the purpose of the study, or you had a lot of attrition, everyone dropped out, or because it was an interview, people just stopped answering the last questions and you could tell they were getting bored. What happened? And I would say maybe 2 to 3. You don't want to give them all of them, but at the same time you can't pretend your study was perfect and just give them one. You then have your future directions. This is future directions for research. So, are there other populations that need to be studied? Are there alternative ways to study this? For example, did you do quantitative and research should now do qualitative? Did you study men and they should now study women? Or, I don't know, did you study men and maybe it was a specific group of men that had really interesting results, and therefore future directions should be that specific group of men is studied more, maybe in a qualitative way to understand why. You then, should they use other assessment methods? Should they use other ways of assessing memory? Should they... Basically, how else can they do your research? What can be added to your research? You then have a conclusion, which is a whole paper summary. Your conclusion is just, we studied this, we found this, it has important implications for society. It's 4 sentences, 5 sentences. It doesn't have to be great. It's just a big summary of everything that you have done. Like, you don't include numbers, don't include anything like that. Like, just include maybe what were the main findings, what was the main reason you think that happened, and what are the implications. Like, pick and choose the important bits. That's your conclusion. If you also have an abstract, do it last. Do not do it first. You can't do it if you've not done the other information. Your abstract is essentially just a conclusion. What you can do with your abstract is, I think it's 150 words. You can either just write, as in you don't use like mini headings or anything like that. You just say, 1 sentence intro, maybe 2 sentences intro, 1 method 2 results, 1 conclusion. Or you can split it into sections. So I had the word background, bold, with colon. Oh, in the pandemic, anxiety got worse. And like, because your abstract is short, you don't have to answer every research question or use them all. I only used the did anxiety get worse because it was the biggest, most important one. So you can do what I did, which is, background, 2 sentences, method, ... method, results, ... results, conclusion, ... conclusion. Keywords are then normally quite easy to find. It's just the words that you've put in your title pretty much, or I don't know, the words that you think are important. Like mine was pandemic, COVID-19, anxiety, older adults, something along those lines. And then obviously, like, if you have to deal with all the formatting stuff, if there's a template, or if your university's provided a template, fill it in, copy and paste your work into there, like do a title page, all of that kind of stuff, contents page. If not, but you're still expected to hand it in a specific way, find other examples. Someone will post their dissertation online, or your university might have like a guide on how to submit it, and it might say that everything has to be in size 12 font, left aligned. Like, check for these small conventions that should be done, as in, is it double spaced, is it single spaced, is it left aligned, is it indented, is it hanging indents, what is it supposed to look like? And then references, do them as you go. I swear, if you do them at the end, it's just such a waste of time. Like, first of all, reference generator, get the Google Scholar button. I love the Google Scholar button. I would die for her. I think she's incredible. Only thing she doesn't include is the DOI. Then put the DOI on. I had all of my papers, I did all of my references at the beginning, and then I went back at the end and added all my DOIs, because I didn't realise you were supposed to have them. But apparently in APA, if it exists, you have to put it in, which means you have to put it in because it does exist for literally every paper apart from a book or something. So if you have to find a DOI, you just Google the title of the paper and then it will pop up. But then you will probably have to do annoying things like sorting out your appendix. Like, it's fine if your appendix doesn't look great. My appendix just said Appendix A, consent form, Appendix B, ethics. Like, it's just a copy and paste of the information that participants were given. Or basically, you want to use your appendix to save you words, mostly in the methods section with like the consent form or a debrief form or an information sheet that participants were given. Basically anything participants were given goes in your appendix. I think that is everything structurally going through it. If we then think about kind of quick tips, plan your time. You have so long to do a research paper. Split up your time, do a week for the intro, a week for this, like sit down for an hour and just work, okay? Don't get distracted, just do it. There were so many people at the end of the year for me who just hadn't done their research papers, and they were all getting extensions, they were all in the library 7 days a week on the last week it was due. I might have moved, but that's just how it is. But yeah, allocate your time effectively, whether it's that you have a dissertation notebook planner, whether it's that it is a module, schedule it in like a module, put it in your Google Calendar for 2 hours every Thursday afternoon, you're going to sit and do your dissertation, and actually do it as you go. It's so easy to do it as you go. Like, it's not worth waiting until the last week. Like, you can write your intro pretty much as soon as you've submitted your lit review. You can do your method after you've made your study. Even if no one's responded to it, you can write all of your method and all of your intro. Find papers for your discussion if you can't write your discussion yet because people haven't given you results. What results are you expecting to find? What papers would support the points that you found, and what papers would go against the point that you found? I think that's the only tip. Like, I think a research paper is easier than a lit review. It's more work, but you are correct or incorrect. Like, do everything multiple times. Have a friend check the method with you. Run the stats tests 5 times. Double check everything. Like, your discussion, have a friend read it. Does it actually make sense? Especially like the discussion, the summary of results bit. I should be able to understand that. If I'd never read a stats test before, I should know what's going on. if someone read your paper, can they understand it? And like also think about what level is your paper aimed for. Your paper is probably aimed for people your age or higher. So everything should be kind of a bit difficult to understand. Like, as much as it's, you know, I don't know, you're a specialist in that topic maybe, or you're doing a specialist paper on that topic, I should probably be able to understand it maybe with a bit of difficulty. Like, I think I've read other people's lit reviews, I've read other people's research papers. There should be bits I can't quite understand, and that's fine. I should be able to get the gist of what's going on. I should be able to know your results, know what you're trying to prove. But if I can't exactly understand how your EEG works, that's fine. Or if maybe I can't quite get, my friend did something with terror management theory. It took me a little bit of time to figure out what the hell that means. Like, if there are bits that your friends read and they can't understand, that's fine. It's okay. Like, you want them to understand the gist, but if your friends read it and have absolutely no idea what's going on, then you probably need to make it a bit more simple. Again, I'm not talking like plain English. It should still be academic, but it should be understandable to people in your year. It should be understandable to your peers. I don't think I have any other tips other than, you know, reference along the way, use reference generators. I'll link all the helpful resources I had, and I will probably be including pictures and stuff on the screen of like what my research paper looked like, that kind of thing. But it is doable, and like, I know that some people do it like as instead of another module. So treat it like a module. Treat it like what it is. If it's worth 40% of your final year, treat it like it's worth 40% of your final year. Give it at least 40% of your effort. Like, yes, you have other modules, but if this is worth more, it should be getting more time and more effort per week. Even if it's just that you spend some of that time running the stats test but you don't write anything up, or you're making a questionnaire but you're not actually going to post it yet. All of your time, you should be allocating time towards it, even if it doesn't feel like it's a looming deadline. Even if, I don't know, you've got 4 months to do it, okay, do it in those 4 months then. Like, it's very easy to get it done on time, it's very easy to get it done early. Do not leave it to the last minute. If I have any other tips, I'll probably have put them on the screen like I did for my lit review. But take a deep breath. Treat it like a module, because it is a module. Give it a bit of effort. Give it a little bit of time. You're in your third year, you're probably not interested in clubbing that much anymore anyway, so you've got more time. So just take a deep breath. Go home and just do some little tippy tapping on it. Get some stuff done. So that is everything I have to say. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope the lighting wasn't too bad. I have got a ring light. Look, this is cool, this is warm, this is lighting, regular. It's kind of fun. Yeah, that's kind of all I had to say, but I just wanted to show my ring light. It's fun. Yeah, thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, I might not be able to help, but I will give it a go.